you have kids or you were ever a kid, which is all of us at one time, we've probably all been around or been in a situation where you blow up a balloon as big as you can until it pops, right? If you've ever witnessed that, if you've ever been around somebody or you've been in the room where somebody is doing that, you know, they're blowing into that balloon, they're huffing and puffing and that thing is huge, right? And you're sitting there and you're just kind of waiting for that explosion. You're just waiting for it. You're kind of wincing. You're kind of just sitting there. You're tightening up. You're just anticipating the explosion of that balloon. And it kind of gives you this, I don't know, just this tense feeling of like, I don't know when it's going to happen, but I think it could be this one. Maybe it's not that one. Maybe it's this one. And that can be super stressful for us. And we're wrapping up our series today called Breathing Room. This is week 4. And if you've ever been in a relationship where you just feel like things are just right there at that explosion point where things are just about to take off and not be good and just blow up right in your face, the importance of having breathing room in our lives and in our relationships is so huge. And so today, if that's you, if you find yourself currently in that situation where you're just looking at this relationship and you just are waiting for it to explode, today is going to be a great day for you to lean in and tune into what Chris has got in store for us. So why don't we join Chris right now for part 4 of our series, Breathing Room.
So there's a couple of different kinds of people when it comes to driving. Okay, there's more than a couple, but specifically around this, some of you fill your tank with gas and then you drive it till it's about a quarter of a tank from empty, and then you fill it up again. And then you do that over and over and over again. And every now and then, if life's just going crazy, you'll get almost to 1/8 of a tank before you refill. We'll call you the cautious, well, reasonable people. And then there's others who are watching this, and perhaps me, who like to fill their vehicle with fuel and then drive it till it's as close to possibly running out of fuel as possible and then get more. Now for me, I'm just going to tell you, I feel like I'm saving money somehow by doing that. It feels like they're not getting my money yet. I know that makes no sense, but stay out of my business. Or the other way is I am being much more time efficient. I'm filling up less times per year because I wait a little bit longer. In my mind, that makes sense, and stay out of my mind. That's just the way it works. I talked to a lady this week and she said, I can go from when it says distance to empty 0, I've got 21 more miles on my car before it's actually empty. When I ask how you know that, how she knows that, well, you know how she knows that. Well, you know. The problem is a lot of us live our life that way. We have figured out distance to empty, and if everything goes just exactly like we plan, we can pull it off. The problem is life seldom goes just as it is planned. It doesn't work that way. We're in a series called Breathing Room, and the whole concept around the series is that we need some space between where we live normally and our absolute limits. Matter of fact, we said it this way as a definition for breathing room. We said breathing room is the space between our current pace and our limits. That requires two things that really make this difficult. It's easy to say, hard to live out. One, it requires us to be honest about our current pace, about where it is. A lot of us would have to stop and assess and be really honest and painfully honest about that. The other thing is to recognize our limits. How you doing with that? Do you know where your limits are? You know how we find out our limits is by going beyond our limits, and that's one of the painful parts of the process. But the truth is, if we don't create breathing room in our life, we've used the analogy of a closet, and we said a closet that has breathing room would look like this. There's space. Even if you bought something new, look, you could just put it in here and there would be room. The problem is in life, we keep taking on more. Life doesn't ever stand still. It keeps adding up. It keeps multiplying. It keeps building on. And if your life is already full, and for some of us this is how it is, we just keep cramming more things until eventually it all starts falling apart. And that may not matter with your closet. Heck, it may not matter that much if you have to stop and get somebody to take you to the gas station, but in bigger areas of life, not having breathing room is catastrophic. Well, today I don't want to talk about general areas. Last week we looked at the subject of time, and the week before we looked at it with our resources. Today I want to talk specifically about what happens when a person doesn't have breathing room and how it affects our relationships. Here's the crazy truth about this. Your relationships will determine your happiness in life. You show me a person with a bunch of bad relationships, I'll show you a person who is not happy. You know that's true. It takes so little bad relational stuff to splash over into everything else. We take it to work, we take it to play, we take it everywhere we go. I can have a bad day at work and go home, and if everything else is great, I can survive that. But it is difficult to live in a world of bad relationships and have a good life. So how breathing room affects our relationships, you can't get any more essential to our happiness or contentment or fulfillment in life than that. As we kind of dig in, I'm just going to be honest with you about this. I'm coming as if you were in a recovery group, I'd say, hi, my name is Chris, and I'm a grateful believer in Jesus who really struggles with this issue of breathing room. I've tried to live a life where I said I don't want to have any regrets when I look back. One of my regrets is around this issue. I feel like it is something that I have broken down on in my life. It has cost me. It brought regret to me. I don't know if I've got it all figured out now, but I know I've put a lot of time and energy and focus on doing better with this one. Unfortunately, it hasn't just affected me. It has affected everybody around me. That's the sad part. If it's just me, I would go, suck it up. The problem is when breathing room isn't working in my life, it bumps into or splashes over onto everybody else around me, especially those we love the most. That's why we're talking about it today. As we walk through this today, hey, maybe you're in a spot where you've got a lot of breathing room. If that's you, fight to keep that. For a lot of us, this is an issue. It's not a once and for all. You don't just hear something once. You don't just make a decision once, because life accumulates just like your closet refills over the course of time. And if you don't constantly take out and put in and readjust, you find that you end up in this situation. Everything in life moves at that speed. Here's what I found to be an issue for me, and maybe you're not this way, but I suspect most of us have some of this. I've got a lot of responsibilities. I got a lot of hats to wear. I am a husband, I'm a son, I'm a father, I'm a brother, I'm an uncle, I'm a friend, I'm an employee, I've been an employer, an employee, I'm part of a neighborhood, I'm part of a society. I got a lot of different hats. There's probably several more than that. And I want to do them all well. I want to achieve at all of those. I want to outrun expectations at every one of those. I don't want to let anybody down. I want to finish life and look back and say I killed it in all those areas. And here's the ugly reality that I've come up with. It may not even be true. It is definitely true for me. There's just not enough time when it comes to that. I don't know that it's possible for me to be great at all those things. And the truth is, there's probably more things than I listed, and they keep coming over the course of time. You keep adding more in. Somebody says, hey, would you? And you go, okay, I'll do that. I'm going to take some extra classes. Okay, I want to be great at that. Okay, I'll help out at the local school, and I'll be part of the parents thing there. I'll do that. And I'll add, and I'll add, and I'll add. And here's the ugly reality for most of us. There's just not enough time to be as good at everything as we want to be. It's hard to be super mom, super dad, super friend, super employee, super wife, super husband, super everything else in life, and to care for yourself enough to stay in a healthy place. There just doesn't seem to be enough time. And as a result, a lot of us live a life that is crammed full. We live a life without very much breathing room. Now for me, I feel like I don't know that I ever balanced it well. I grew up in a home with a dad where every day that I got up, he was already at work. If I got up at 6:30, he was gone. He left early. He tended to work a lot. And here's some of the weird stuff. About twice a year, he would feel guilty because he was kind of the vacant parent. And I don't know if he would hear a message at church, or I don't know if he'd read a book, or I don't know if God just convicted. I don't know how that worked. I was a kid, and you don't have all that stuff at your disposal. I just know he would come home and he would say something to us, and it would sound like a great thing, but for us, we would just go, oh no, that can't be, not now. He would say, especially as we got older, he'd say, kids, we need to spend more time together. And I would be like, oh shoot, this is gonna suck. He would say, I'm going to start taking a day off a week, because he never took a day off a week. Matter of fact, sometimes he wouldn't take a day off in 6 months. And he would say, I'm going to start taking a day off and we're going to do stuff together. Well, there's a couple of problems with that. Because he had never done that, we weren't very good at that as a family. Like we didn't really know, he didn't know how to interact in our little world except when he got home from about 6 o'clock in the evening till about 9 o'clock in the evening when he had fallen asleep, and at least an hour of that was going to contain the news and eating dinner and reading the paper. So he really wasn't used to being around us other than for really short spurts of time. So for him to stay home was a weird thing. Like he didn't know what to do staying home. If you never do anything but go, stay is a tough thing. Well, we didn't know how to fit him into our world either. And so it was just awkward. And so we would go bowling. That was a thing. Like, hey, it's a day off, let's go bowling. That was fun. That was a cool thing. That was the go-to staple. And then the next week, we would go play putt-putt. And then the third week, he was busy again, and we never came back to it. That's about as far as we got, but we did that a lot of times in my life. At least a couple times a year, we took at least 2 weeks and had a day off and did things as a family. And for him, it was sort of like, I don't know how to do this very well because I haven't, and that makes sense, and it would take a while to get used to that. For us, it was not that we didn't appreciate what he was doing or didn't like him. It's just that we didn't know how to interact around that. And in the end, what we did is we just moved forward. I think for him, it was like, I'm going back to there. And he was like, whew, that's better. And for us, it's like, he's going back to there. And it was like, yay. I appreciate him loving us this way, but it's awkward. And I can do what I want to this way. In life, he lived a bumper to bumper, no breathing room life. The way it splashed over on us is we didn't know how to interact with him around. It was obvious to us that out there was more appealing, more drawing, more compelling than in our home was. And I don't say that to be mean. There were a lot of things out there that were compelling. And for a lot of us, it's that way. And I don't say any of that to talk about him. I say that to say about me that I have found myself in the same spot. That if you didn't work 60 or 70 hours a week, I felt like I was letting somebody down. I wasn't doing what I was supposed to do. But what I realized is if you do that, there's not enough hours to do all the other things. I was repeating what I had seen, and I wasn't doing it out of lack of love for my family. I was doing it because, well, a couple of reasons. One of them is that it's what I was best at. I was better out there than I was at home. When I was there, sometimes people would say, hey, great job, Chris. Way to go, you're doing a great job. At home, it's fluid. There's not a checklist. There's not just an easy remedy to anything. And so for me, what I found myself doing a lot is living all the way to the limits in my life. And then when new things came up, I know this is going to sound weird. We'll put it up here on the screen to make it more palatable, I guess. When we live without breathing room long enough, when we go long enough with a lifestyle that says I'm living to the max, if everything goes perfect, it's fine, but everything never goes perfect, we eventually ask those we love most to temporarily hold their breath. For me, it sounded like this. Hey, we're tackling something new. We're going to start a new church. We're going to go a new place. We're going to build a building. We're going to tackle something new. And I would come to the people I love, especially my wife, and I would say, hey, this next season is going to be super tough. It's going to require everything. And I wonder if you would do this. I know I'm not going to be able to do everything I need to here. Would you help me? And you know what she said? Yes, because that's the way she is. What I was kind of saying, would you just temporarily take a deep breath and just hold on to it? Because people can hold their breath for a minute. And she was like, yes, I know it's going to be tough. I know it's going to require more of you out there than it has in the past. So I'm ready for that. The problem is that out there always had a next thing. Whatever I said the temporary was, there was always another thing right behind it that was another temporary thing. And you know what? Somebody can hold their breath. People can hold their breath. I mean, I can hold my breath for about a minute, maybe. Some people that are trained can hold their breath for a couple of minutes, 2 or 3 minutes, or maybe beyond. But I'm just going to tell you, long term, people can't do that, and eventually things begin to fall apart. And you can ask people to do that for a short time, and sometimes we have to. But when over and over again we run toward and away from, and we ask the people that we love most, hey, this is just a season, this is just a time, this is just till we can get to there, and it never stops, or it seldom stops, or we continually ask. Eventually, you know what you're going to find? People come home and one day somebody says, you know what, this doesn't work for me anymore, I don't want to be here anymore. I talk to people all the time who said, hey, I don't know what to do. I just got a call from my husband and he said he's out. He's done. He's finished with this. Been struggling? Yeah, we've been struggling, but all in all, but I love him and I thought he loved me and I thought he loves the kids, but he wants out. You know what? He's reached a point where he has held his breath long enough and it's time to go. Or the other way around. It's a guy who says, hey, I came home, I just got back from the trip and I got home and she says, we're done. We're done. I've talked to an attorney. It's over. Or maybe it's somewhere else in your life. It's with your extended family. Maybe it's with your kids where people just say, you know what, enough is enough. I've had enough. It happens all the time. You know why? Because you can ask people to hold their breath so long, but eventually they exhale. And when they do, it's messy. And for a lot of us, that is the story of our life, especially a life without breathing room. If you want to know, am I living a life without breathing room? I've got some symptoms. I don't think any of these are super scientific. Honestly, they're probably just my story. And so take them for whatever they're worth. Maybe they'll land where you are too. Let me give you a couple of them. Symptoms of living a life without breathing room. One is we start repeating promises to do better. You find yourself saying, oh, I'm so sorry. Actually, I had it all planned. Because this would be a Chris thing to say. I had it all planned, but then that happened, and they came in. Or I thought I could be out of there in 30 minutes, and it took 45, or I was gonna, and then traffic, and then you find yourself saying, but you know what, next time I'll do better. I'm gonna leave a little extra time. I'll make sure I'm here for that. I'm gonna make sure that I do what I said. You find yourself repeatedly promising to do better. That is typical of a person who's living without breathing room. Let me give you a second one. Chronically absent from events. We just miss things we didn't mean to miss. We miss events that we said, yeah, I'll be there, I'll show up. I may be a minute late, but I promise I'll be there because I'm hurrying across town. We chronically almost make it. We chronically intend to get there. We chronically miss events. And we find ourselves making excuses for it, but there is no excuse when it's the person who is waiting for you to arrive. One of the ways that you know you're living without breathing room in your life, especially for your relationships, is chronically absent from events. The third one would be this. It's when we point to the future to make up for the past. This is kind of my worst one. Every now and then, because my wife and I, in just a couple of weeks, we'll have an anniversary. We've been married 39 years this May 27th. And in 39 years, I think Leslie said this to me 5 or 6 times. She's thought it 39,000 times. She's gifted at not always saying what she thinks. My philosophy is this. I'll say, Leslie, if I can just get past Easter, if I can just get to the summer, you know what? If we can just get to the fall, if we can just get past the holidays, if we can just get in the new building, if we can just get 2 more people hired, if we can just fill in the blank, if we can just get the budget done, if we can just grow that to there, if we can just get that started. Every now and then Leslie will say to me, And she is kind and supportive in more ways than you can imagine. But every now and then she'll say, "You really believe that, don't you?" Well, that makes me want to punch her in the throat, but I don't. But it does make me say at times, yes, I really believe it. I've been believing every one of those for 38 years and running. I really do believe as soon as I get to there, it's going to get easier. As soon as I get past that, that's going to free it up. The problem is, it's never happened yet. It's like when you take your foot out of the sand and the water comes in, it just refills the footprint. That's the way my life has worked. I suspect yours too. That you go, hey, if we can ever just get that one bill paid off, we're going to have plenty of money. Or if we can just get that extra $100 a paycheck more, we're going to have plenty. And by the time you've got it, it's already gone. And you're like, if I just had 100 more, if I just had 200 more. Well, that's the way life often works for me. I think it's the way it works for people who don't have breathing room. It's how it works in their relationships. You find yourself constantly pointing to the future saying, if I can just get to there, you know what? I know this has been tough. I know you've been holding your breath, but I'm going to get oxygen. I'm going to give you just what you need. And sometimes people are like, so here's some flowers. That'll fix it. I can't breathe. How about some flowers? How about a trip? Oh, I can't breathe. I know, but what if we did that? And down the road, guess what we can do? We find ourselves pointing to the future. Let me give you another one, and this is getting really real for me. It's when you think about what you aren't doing. It's how you know you have a life without breathing room. I don't even know if those words make sense on a screen. It makes sense in my head because for me, it's what happens that when I'm at work and I know that I'm putting more time and energy and focus there than I should, I find myself feeling guilty for not being at home. I find myself feeling guilty for not being a better dad, a better husband, a better piece of our family. But the problem is when I'm at home, I often feel guilty that I'm not working and I feel like I'm letting somebody else down and I'm never going to become what I should have become and our organization's never going to reach the milestones it should because I'm not doing what I should do. And when I'm at home, I feel like I ought to be at work, and when I'm at work, I feel like I ought to be at home. And God forbid I ever do something just for enjoyment, to go play a round of golf or go hang out with friends or watch a movie or watch a ball game with a bunch of buddies, because while I'm doing that, I feel like, you know what I really ought to be doing now? I ought to be at home or ought to be at work. It's when you're always thinking about what you're not doing, that is not a healthy sign. People with breathing room can take a deep breath and be where they are. The ability to be where you are is tough. It's why some of you watching this are struggling right now, because while you're doing this, your mind is on 10 things that you're not doing. It's not a great sign. It could be a sign that the speaker is boring, but I'm blaming you, not me, because that would make me feel bad. Let me give you one more, and this is where it lands for me. We justify what we do by comparing. Last week, Jeremy talked about the fact that a lot of us, we do what we do trying not to be our parents. He said parents never win, and there's a piece of that's true. If you grew up poor, for a lot of us, we go, you know what, I'm working my butt off now at this stage of life, but my kids are never going to grow up the way I grew up. We had nothing, and we're working to make sure it never happens again. And hey, that's not a bad thing that you want to provide for your kids. I'm not shooting at it. But when we justify not having breathing room in our life by comparing it to something else, it's just saying that was broken, so I'm going to do something broken to fix it. That doesn't even make sense. Sometimes it's the ability to say, hey, my dad was lazy. The guy down the street, I'm not going to be one of those people who expects everybody to give me something. The government needs to give me. The people need to give me. I deserve. That's not the way I am. I'm going to work. I'm a working person. I'm going to let my family know that I work hard. We justify it by comparing to people who do less. There's so many of those. Hey, those kids have got those opportunities. I'm going to make sure my kids have those opportunities. They've got that kind of place. I'm going to make sure we have that kind of place. And we justify it. I know I'm a little out of balance, but the reason I'm out of balance, hey, listen, when you have to explain why you're out of balance, it's just time to try to get back in balance. You know how I know that? I did that. I'm the captain of that ship. I am in charge of that, man. I could say, you know, I'm doing what I'm doing, but you would think you would be thrilled that I'm doing it because look what I'm doing. When you have to justify, usually it's a good sign that you're living with a lack of breathing room. And the reason all of us do that is because we all love Progress. Look at it. We love progress. We love things to move forward. We love to look and say, hey, it was there, it is there. We were this big of a company, now we're that big. I was at this stage of my career, now I'm at that. We lived in a this big, and now we live in a this big. I used to drive one of those, but now I drive one of those. I'm not sure if the steering wheel gets larger, but in my version, it obviously does. You're driving an 18-wheeler now, a bus, a school bus, whatever it is. It is built within us. Not many of us say, you know what, I used to drive a really nice vehicle, now I'm driving this. I just wanted to scale way back and drive a kind of a junky vehicle. It is not built within us. I'm not saying it never happens. Most of the time when it happens out of necessity, not out of desire. But most of us, progress is built in us, that we want to move up and to the right on the graph. We want to move forward. Most people don't say, hey, listen, we live in this now, but next one, what we want is less cool countertops. You know, we've got granite now, or we've got quartz now, but you know what I'm wanting? Formica. I'm wanting to go back to Formica because it was just so awesome. That's what I want. You know what we're wanting? Fewer bathrooms. We're living right now with 3, but we're saying 1 or even just a half would be fine. 1 outside would be great. Most of us want to move forward. It is built within us. There's some of us who live our whole life trying to make sure we have enough for when we quit working. We live our whole life so that at the very end of our life, we'll have a life. And the problem is we sometimes miss our whole life doing it. We're so progress driven, it is difficult. That's why a lot of us accumulate so much stuff, so much schedule, so much responsibility, so many things that we feel like we treat them all as one big focus, that we have to be great at all, and in the end we miss out the most important things. Now for me, when I hit that point in my life where I recognized, sometimes I love progress more than I wanted to be with my family. Sometimes I was so consumed about winning and next steps and moving forward and success because that was feeding me something. I didn't recognize that was feeding me something. A lot of it was because I had things inside of me that said some lies that we're going to look at in just a second, but I'm just telling you it was feeding me something. Some of it was well-intentioned. I wanted to take better care of my family. I wanted to build a platform where I could do more for my family. But mostly what I recognized is that I was putting things that were of lesser importance into a place of greater importance. I don't think I'm the first one to do that. For me, when I faced off with that, I had to recognize something that I teach at church all the time. I believe there was a guy who was conceived by God and brought miraculously to earth, who lived a sinless life and died on our behalf as a payment for our sins. And I believe he raised himself from the dead. And I believe that the people who saw that wrote down things about it. It's what we call our New Testament, eyewitnesses of what happened with Jesus and who Jesus was. And I believe that stuff. I believe it to the core of my being. I teach it. Sometimes I just struggle to practice it. But I believe the things that they said. One of the guys who met a lot of the people who knew Jesus, hung out with Jesus, and even wrote about Jesus, his name was Paul, and Paul wrote some words that has to do with how we deal with relationships, especially around this breathing room issue. This is what it says in Ephesians chapter 5. Check this out. It's a super familiar verse. It uses a word that we hate. It is the word submit. Submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. Now, a lot of people like the verses around this because it tells wives what to do and husbands what to do. In the end, we can fix all of the words that are after it by these words, submit to one another. The word submit literally means to place ahead of yourself, to place their needs ahead of your needs. The problem is that's hard to define. How do I define their needs compared to my needs? But literally, it is a posture of saying, listen, I know what I want to do. I know what I'm driven to do, but I'm going to do what's best for you. Submit to one another. It is the way relationships are supposed to work. This is lost in our society today. It's lost in our homes, and God knows it's lost everywhere else. Because the truth is, I want what I want, and you better get out of my way. Submit to one another is old school, but it is so true. It is the basis of functional relationships. The tough part of submitting what I want for what's best for someone else is that for me, I have to accept there's a couple of things going on. One of those, and this is a 4-letter word that you're not going to like either, Matter of fact, it's kind of a dirty word to throw out around a bunch of people. It's a dirty 4-letter F word, and it's this word, fear. Fear. Part of my issues is that I fear. What fear often says is, if I don't, it won't. It made me say, if I don't do all of those things, I know it's hurting over here, but if I don't do those things, how will we ever get to there? How will we ever be able to how will we ever get the kids in college? How will we ever pay for the house? How will we ever dig out of this? How will the organization move forward? If I don't, it won't. You don't understand. It's easy to talk about in church. I've got this weight on my shoulder. If I don't, it won't. And all of that, by the way, is just fear. I don't want to call it that. I want to call it drive or ambition, wisdom. You can call it whatever you want. It's fear. That's the dirty little word. Fear. Something inside says, if I don't, it won't. That's why when it comes, the reason I place my trust in Jesus is because He's got something I don't. I have to have faith that God will do something else. When He says submit yourself to each other, to one another, literally He's saying it comes with a promise. Matter of fact, fear says if I don't, it won't. However, faith, that's the opposite of fear. Faith comes with this piece, and it says if I do, He'll do. It comes with a promise. It says if I choose to follow Him, that the weight of all of those, but what's going to happen, fall on His shoulders, not mine. Matter of fact, look at the verse in Philippians chapter 2. It says, in your relationships with each other, you must have the same attitude as Christ Jesus had. That's a starting point. It just says if you want it to work, do what He did. Think like He thought. So it brings us to the question, well, how did He think? I'm glad you asked. 3 verses later, it says this. He humbled Himself. Let's just stop right there. He humbled Himself. That word humbled Himself is the same as the word we come with submit. It means He placed others in front of Himself. It means He didn't say what's good for me. He said what's good, what's best. He humbled Himself. The way He did is He became obedient to God. His humility made Him obedient to God, and He died a criminal's death on the cross. Here's the crazy thing. He had to face that what was best for Him and what was best for everyone else wasn't always the same. But in the end, that God had a bigger plan. So what He didn't say was, if I don't, it won't. He could have said, listen, I'm on this earth, and if I don't help all these people out, how will they ever be helped out? Instead, He did just the opposite. He allowed Himself to die and be taken off the scene. That's nuts. Whose plan is that? Whose business plan is that? As a result, though, we get this next verse, and this verse is money. This is where it all gets real. He says, because He humbled Himself and became obedient, therefore God elevated Him to a place of highest honor. The way He made it where He wanted to go was He trusted God. He did the next right thing and trusted God to do the rest. As a result, even in death, God elevated Him. The truth is, for most of us, to submit requires a little bit of death. For me to place somebody else's need in front of mine requires a little bit of dying to me. But here's the promise. God said, if you'll do, I'll do. If you'll trust me with that, I will give you just what you need. I'll provide for you just what you need. I'll provide for your kids or your extended family I'll provide because I'm God and I can. But I can't until you can't. Until you reach the point where you say, my job is to follow and submit to the people around me and humble myself before God. And then God will elevate the rest. He'll balance the books. He'll do what's necessary. I think the bottom line for me when I've looked at this in my life, I've landed at a spot where I've said the result of a no breathing room life is that you'll just never know what God could have done. I took it on myself. I couldn't slow down. I charged ahead. I pushed forward. You may win in a lot of areas, but I'll promise you this. If you're not careful, a no breathing room life is going to lap over to your family, to the people you love most, to the people around you who you cherish. It may be with good intentions, but it'll be with bad outcomes. The level of pain that comes from that is overwhelming. And often, here's the sad part, we'll never know what God could have done. We'll never know if you could have humbled yourself and said, listen, I'm going to do what's most important first. And with whatever time I have left, I'm going to do the rest. You'll never know what God could have done because God can do amazing things. Let me give you one more. You'll never know what the story that could have been told. You'll never know what your kids or your grandkids, you'll never know what your extended family, you'll never know as you wrap up your life when you look back the story that you could have told about how God was faithful. Just like Philippians 2, what we know is that because Jesus did what he did, the story that is told, we celebrate week after week after week. It brought life to all of us who are willing to accept it. So here's kind of our bottom line. This is our wrap-up point. I'll say this as a guy who doesn't always know how to do it. Check out this statement. Don't trade what's unique to you. Let's just stop right there. You know what's unique to me? Not much. Like standing here is not unique to me. As a matter of fact, somebody different will stand here next week. It's not unique to me. Whatever your job is, you may think it's unique to you. If tomorrow you disappeared off the face of the earth, somebody will run with it. What's unique to you is not mowing your yard. Somebody else can mow your yard. What's unique to you is not, hey, you know what's unique to me? I'm Leslie's husband. I'm Leslie's first husband. She may can get another husband. She can't ever get another first husband. I win. I'm Leslie's first husband. That is unique to me. I'm Kyle and Drew and Claire's dad. That's unique to me. And I'm part of a unique little family that God put me into. That's what's unique to me. Everything else I do, I can be replaced. Everything else I do, you could take me out, put another person in. Truth be known, the person that comes in will probably do better than me. But what is unique to me are those simple little things. Leslie, Kyle, Drew, Claire, and the little family God has put me in. My job is never to trade what's unique to you for something someone else could do. Never to trade it for something else. Never to hand it off to someone else. Never to let the other things become more important than the things that I was built for, the things I'm unique to. It's not complicated. Here's the truth. God said if we will win in the area that's most important, he will support us in everything else. The question is, do we live out of fear or do we live out of faith? Do we believe that enough to do it? And I don't know what that looks like for you. I just wonder for you, is there something in your life you need to begin to adjust? Our goal today is not to make you feel guilty about the way you're living. My goal is not to make you feel bad because what you're doing, to be honest, has been much more of a day to say, I've screwed this up. I have fought hard to do it well and failed a lot. But I'm not going to be content with that. I want to choose to make the most important things the most important things, and it doesn't mean nothing else is important. It just means nothing else is as important. There's a big difference there. I hope you find that true. I hope you can find some breathing room so you can love the gift that God has given you that's unique to you, and when that's right, so that you can love everything else that he's given to you as well. So God, help us with that. Don't let us look back with regret. Let us tell a story someday of how we followed you and trusted you, and you raised us up and elevated us right where you wanted us. We ask it in your name.